I was admittedly a little anxious to see how the Bulls would come out and play tonight, coming off of the loss Thursday against the Knicks. It had to be the Knicks that gave them their first loss. Damn it. Stupid Knicks. This was going to be a good test for the Bulls. You know, they've got a lot of good tests coming up in the next couple of weeks, and they needed to respond here at home against a Utah Jazz team that certainly is one of the better teams in the Western Conference. It's a big spot for the Bulls. And maybe they drew some inspiration from the dynasty of the 90s. It was Toni Kukoč night. It was great to see the waiter, the Croatian sensation himself, live and in living color. Man, I tell you, Toni Kukoč, if anybody sits there and tries to tell you that he's not a basketball Hall of Famer, they're insane. Because you look at all that he did during his time in Europe, certainly worthy of that. You know, he's one of those players, again, that helped grow the game internationally. But even more so, like, I look at Toni Kukoč and I say, that's a dude that if he played in today's game, he'd be even better than he was in the 90s. He would be a multiple-time All-Star. There's no question about it. His skills, his size, his style would have fit even more perfectly. He could have been a franchise's 1A or 1B type of player. He really could have. And the one thing I always say about Toni Kukoč, and I've got a lot of memories of him, obviously, from his time in the 90s with the Bulls. Lots of good memories associated. If you said your favorite Bulls memory with Kukoč, for me, it's probably Game 7 of the 98 Eastern Conference Finals against the Pacers. So he went off in that third quarter. To Kukoč, who's been on fire and stays that way. Like when I think about Bob Costa saying that, to this day, it still gives me chills. Now, there's a very good chance the Bulls don't even get back to the 98 finals without Kukoč and that big performance in the third quarter and just that great performance in Game 7 in general. But when thinking about Kukoč, he absolutely would have been an all-star in today's game. But the thing I've always respected about Toni Kukoč the most is that when he came over, he came over thinking that he was going to play with Jordan. That initially didn't happen. Then when it did happen, Kukoč had to take a step back in his game and sacrifice a lot of individual statistics and recognition for the greater good of the team. And a lot of lesser players, a lot of lesser men would have been unable to do so and unwilling to do so. But Kukoč was. And if anything, it's a shame because on the one hand, he's associated obviously with those 90s Bulls dynasty teams. He was a 3-time NBA champion. People think about him in that light. But I think sometimes people don't think about just how great of a basketball player he was. And just how much unrealized potential he frankly had as an NBA player because of the fact that he played on those teams with Jordan and Pippen. And he had to take a bit of a back seat. In today's league, he wouldn't have had none of that shit. He would have been special. We'd be talking about him as a top 5 or 10 player in the league. And if you think I'm nuts, you're nuts for not agreeing with me in this case. So, good memories thinking about the waiter. Yeah, that was his nickname, the Croatian sensation. A dude at that time, 6'11", left-handed, could handle the rock, tremendous floor vision, fantastic touch around the basket, great shooter, a special talent and a special player. He really was. But anyways, on to the game itself and not just reminiscing about Toni Kukoč, which I could do forever. Obviously the Bulls got what appears on the surface to be some bad news with the serious wrist injury to Patrick Williams, which he suffered in the game on Thursday night, which I didn't really talk about, when he fell hard in the third quarter after making contact with Mitchell Robinson. And here's the deal. Patrick Williams had played like shit so far this season. You got to be honest with yourself and say you didn't even really notice his presence. At times he felt like he was only the 7th or 8th best Bull on the floor. That doesn't make him a bust. It just means that's the reality so far early in the season. Was a problem that I saw coming into this year is how's Patrick Williams going to develop with the talent that's been amassed around him now? And this team will only go as far ultimately as Patrick Williams develops. Now he's not there. That sucks on the one hand for a variety of different reasons for the Bulls. This is a guy you took 4th overall last year that you're looking to become a much better player because you want to be able to get some maximum bang for your salary cap dollar out of him while he's on that rookie contract. But there's, also the piece of, you did take him 4th overall. You don't want a top 5 pick like that to be at best a middling role player, and that's what he looked like here. But it does also create a fantastic opportunity for other guys to take over those minutes. And there's a piece here. I think back to the 2003 Cubs. Somewhat different scenario, grant you, but the Cubs were in 2003. Like, we could think about Sosa and da-da-da. And when you think back to 2003, though, that Cubs team, when you got into June, July, they were okay. Looked like they could be a playoff team. But it was when Corey Patterson went down with the injury, and he was having a really good statistical season at that. So that's where it's divergent from Patrick Williams. That's where the Cubs went out there and made the big move to get Kenny Lofton, Aramis Ramirez from the Pittsburgh Pirates, brought in Randall Simon later via the waiver wire, traded. If you look at that, they remade the team, and it's what made them a contender that year. They would have been cheap, the Tribune Corporation. They would have signed Pudge Rodriguez like the fuck they should have to a 1-year, $10 million contract. The Cubs would have won the World Series in 2003. I have no doubts about that. But the point I'm getting at here is when Patterson went down, when he was having a pretty good statistical season, isolated, kind of in his own bubble, he was having a really good season. Once he went down with the injury, the Cubs remade their lineup, made the big moves, and it allowed them to be who they were that year. Now with this Bulls team, it opens up the opportunity for other minutes to go to other guys. We got to see Derek Jones Jr. tonight. Got to see a little more Io tonight. A little more Tony Bradley tonight. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You got Javonte Green and his energy on the floor more. You got him into the starting lineup. It sucks for Patrick Williams' development, but at the same point in time, might absolutely be, in the short term, the best possible things for this Bulls team. It really may. And I thought you saw some of those results tonight. For the first quarter, they came out and they played well. I was impressed. They were up 25-24 after one. Levine tried to be a little more aggressive in the first. He had 6. Lonzo Ball actually led the way with 9. Second quarter, the bench, the second unit, helped stake them out to a bit of a lead, a double-digit lead at that. And the starters came back in, and they kind of played like dog doo-doo. And the Jazz ended up leading 57-54 at the half. They couldn't figure out how to defend Donovan Mitchell in that first half. He had 22 at the break. Rudy Gobert had 7 points and 9 rebounds. And the Jazz had the lead even though they were only shooting 40% from the field and 27% from 3. Meanwhile, for the Bulls, DeMar DeRozan was leading the way with 16 points. Levine with 13 and Ball with 11. It was kind of disappointing to see the bench stake them out to this nice lead in the second quarter, and the starters really pissed it away in short order. It had me concerned for the second half, but they came out in the third quarter and they really D'd up. They held the Jazz to only 18 points. They were up 79-72 after 3. And I thought the key in that third quarter, there are a couple different keys you can point to, but the real key was Tony Bradley gave him some good minutes off the bench. And if we could see him get 10, 12, 15 minutes a night, spelling Vucevic and being that backup post defender and being a bit of a presence, rebounder, shot blocker, lane clogger, it makes this Bulls team better. And I thought you saw that in this third quarter. He had some nice minutes. And it doesn't necessarily always show up on the stat sheet, but you could definitely feel his presence and impact on this game. And then when you got into the fourth quarter, it was one of those things that the Bulls started running away from the Jazz a little bit. And it got a little too close for comfort there at the end, but props to them. As you get going into the season, you want to be able to learn from some of the previous experiences. It didn't quite end up being like the game in Toronto on Monday night. They let the Jazz get back into it, but they didn't let them get all the way back into it. And they had enough, and they ultimately held them off. And the Bulls win on Toni Kukoč night. Yeah! 107-99. DeMar DeRozan, it's been everything you could have wanted so far for this Bulls team other than, actually being able to even at least hit some rim on the attempt at the game-winning shot against the Knicks on Thursday night. Other than that, he led the way with 32 points. He looked great. Zach LaVine, you didn't even really notice he had 26, but he hit some big threes, he hit some big shots. Vucevic had a horrid shooting night, 16 points, but absolutely abysmal, dreadful shooting night. To the point where you could sense fans on Twitter, you could sense some of the fans in the arena were ready to kind of give him some shit because you expected big things out of Vucevic here, and he ain't giving it to you right now. But I will give him credit for this, is that on a horrid shooting night, he hit a couple of big shots late. And that really made the difference for the Bulls. For the Jazz, Donovan Mitchell had 30 points to lead the way for them. Rudy Gobert with 17 points and 19 rebounds. And, one of the things you look at a game like this where the Jazz have Gobert and so forth, they're one of the best rebounding teams in the league, where the Bulls are one of the worst rebounding teams in the league. One of the big notable stats of the night is the Bulls were only out-rebounded by 6. The Jazz had 61 rebounds to the Bulls' 55. So yes, while they lost the battle on the boards, it wasn't nearly as bad as you might have anticipated, and it made somewhat of a difference. It really, really did. And I really look at the keys to this game. You look at DeMar, 32, obviously, great performance. Zach LaVine, 26, very good performance. Vucevic with a couple of key shots late. But to me, it was those supporting cast players, those role players. I'm not going to lump Lonzo Ball into that group, obviously. But you look at Javonte Green, Alex Caruso, Derrick Jones Jr., Ayo, Toni Bradley. That's the reason the Bulls won this game tonight. These bench players came in for the Bulls. Their energy, their effort, their hustle, their desire, their defense, their get after it, if you will, made all of the difference. It helped the Bulls grow their lead at multiple different points in time during the second quarter and especially in the third and fourth quarter. These guys made the difference. So if you were a little concerned about Patrick Williams being out of the lineup for an extended period of time, at least for one game, I tell you, why the hell would you? Because unlike him, where you didn't really feel his presence, and it felt like he was more passive than aggressive this year, even more so than he was as a rookie, you look at some of these guys, and you don't have to look for him. You see him. Jones had a couple of nice blocks, a couple of nice defensive plays. He stepped up and had a good night. Javonte Green, his contributions, his efforts are not always going to reflect on the box score. Same thing with like an Alex Caruso or an Ayo and a Toni Bradley tonight. While this Bulls bench still has some concerns about like where's the scoring come from, because some nights you need somebody that could come off the bench and go for 20. I don't know that they have that guy. The reality is that there are a lot of things to like about this bench, and this bench can get after it. This bench can impact games. This bench in spots can go up against other teams' starting units and hold their own because of their ability to make the other team work, their ability to defend, their ability to get after it. I love some of the ways this team is constructed right now and the way that they're playing. And this was a good win for the Bulls. You shouldn't sit there and pat yourself too much on the back because they just beat the Jazz. But they did beat a very good team tonight, so that is nice. Coming off of a night on Thursday where they lost to a pretty good team in the Knicks, but it took all the way to the very end, and they came back from 13 down with 2.5 minutes to go and only lost by 1. This Bulls team is fun to watch right now. It's nice to watch a good team. 5-1 feels really damn good. I don't know about any of you. It's a hell of a way to celebrate Toni Kukoč night. It certainly was. Hats off to those bench guys for making a big impact tonight. And shout out to AK and Eversley for putting this team together, because right now it's certainly paying off.